So the big question is, what do we do about this? What are some effective anti-racism responses? We want to discourage the perpetration of systemic and interpersonal discrimination, and simply one of the ways to do so is by offering help and support to victims and reinforce anti-racist norms throughout society. So this sort of permeates throughout society. People begin to understand the impact of even sort of these smaller forms of racism. And Liu et al. 2020 came out with an article to show the different types of anti-racism responses that people can have. And they divided them into reactive bystanding and proactive bystanding. Reactive bystanding is to interrupt or challenge perpetrators before or during the discrimination, or even if you're not interrupting that person, to go and seek help from authority or other people, provide comfort or support to the victims, and speak out against the incidents or perpetrators after the fact. Proactive bystanding is like joining or volunteering for advocacy groups, enhancing someone's own knowledge about discrimination and speaking to others about injustices. These behaviors can help strengthen anti-prejudice social norms to prevent future discrimination from occurring. So here's the part that is problematic. It's not that we don't know how to engage in reactive bystanding or proactive bystanding. The problem is, who are the people who are acting as bystanders? So this study by Liu et al. Wanted to look at who are the people who are engaging in anti-racism responses. And the answer basically is the people who are experiencing the racism in the first place. So among individuals who witnessed anti-Asian discrimination during COVID-19, about 45% of such persons engaged in anti-racist reactive bystander interventions, which to me, I think that's pretty positive. About half of people are actually reacting to racism. But the problem is that what we see are that women were more likely to intervene, Asian Americans were more likely to intervene, persons who have experienced racism themselves were more likely to intervene. So for example, individuals who were Black, Hispanic, they were more likely to engage in reactive bystander interventions compared to white persons. So women who they can experience racism not because they're a woman, but because of their racial status, but as a woman, they could also have past experiences with sexism or misogyny. And that seems to have increased the likelihood that they are going to intervene or react to racism. Other studies in the United States have found that individuals who have previously experienced some form of victimization were more likely to be a reactive bystander in high-risk situations involving interpersonal violence. So experiences of past victimization for violence increase the likelihood of future intervention or reaction as a bystander. And some of these things, to me, seem problematic because it's basically showing that the people who are experiencing the racism are the ones that have to stand up to racism. And one of the reasons why this is so problematic is because we know that the experience of racism results in things like depression, anxiety, loss of sleep, physical and other mental health problems. But the response to racism, by being a reactive bystander, that also puts such persons at risk of maybe a physical assault from the person who's being racist, or that person who's being racist turning their attention to the intervener and being racist towards them. So it's the persons that are already being marginalized that are speaking out against racism, being anti-racist, and that's placing them at greater risk. So effectively, what we need to do is figure out strategies to encourage other persons who have not experienced racism in the past to understand how to speak up and intervene, react in order to either stop racism or at least provide comfort to the persons who have experienced racism. What the Liu study also found was that Asian Americans who experienced racism 1 week or further in the past were highly likely to act as a reactive bystander, but Asian Americans that had experienced racism within that last week we're less likely to act as a reactive bystander. And this kind of reiterates this idea that the experience of racism takes its toll on people. It can be demoralizing, distressing, traumatizing, and that might sort of show that there are psychological consequences to racism that impact the person's human agency. Their ability to stand up for others has sort of been reduced because of the draining impact of their own experiences of racism and victimization. So to finish up and sort of summarize the key message here is that white men may need greater levels of training in how to act as a reactive bystander. It's possible that because not experienced these situations in the past, don't necessarily know how to react to them, or are not used to this type of confrontation, and so they have greater levels of fear about that confrontation, whereas persons who have experienced that level of racism in the past are more used to having to deal with these sorts of confrontations, these sorts of conflicts. So what this calls for is maybe even just an acknowledgement that, look, anti-racism can be to intervene, to intercept somebody from being racist, to stop somebody from being racist during that particular event. But if we can't go that far, if we're worried about our own physical safety, for example, it's the showing of support or empathy to the person that has experienced that sort of racist attack, to at least show them that this is not the norm, this is not what we want for our communities. Maybe it is the norm, but we understand that it shouldn't be. You're welcome in this community. I know that this person just told you not to be in this coffee shop. I disagree with them. Maybe I'll buy you a coffee to show my support. These are the types of things that maybe we can do to be anti-racist and to help combat racism. So that's it for this lecture. Hopefully that has been helpful and informative. I know this last part wasn't really about youth in particular, but I think it's such an important topic. It's worthwhile to discuss, even if it doesn't have as clear of a direct connection to course material.